Hi, I'm George, and recently I've been exploring Wwise audio implementation with UE5's Lyra. I approached this project as a technical exercise rather than as a complete redesign, focusing on creating audio systems to aid in player feedback. The first thing I did was set up functionality for basic actions like shooting and walking using anim notifiers. Each footstep triggers a line trace which detects the physical material tag of the surface beneath the player and then outputs the corresponding sound effect. Once I had the basic sounds in, I began exploring the blueprints for ways to build audio systems to aid the player. The first thing I set up was reverb zones for the outdoors, centre circle and sheltered outer ring of the map. This was a good way to communicate where the player is, but also gives up their approximate position to enemy players. I used Wwise's stock reverbs for the majority of sounds, but felt that the Gunshot tails needed a more bespoke feel to them. I designed these tails in a DAW and imported them into a switch container controlled by the output of a line trace which fires at every gunshot to record the location of the player. To help prevent players getting caught out in the middle of a gunfight, I wanted to find a way to show their weapon was reaching the end of its magazine. I implemented this by creating an RTPC for each weapon's ammo counter, which updates after every gunshot and allows me to track how many bullets the player has left in their clip. I exported the mechanical layer of each gunshot separately, which allowed me to use this RTPC to subtly raise the pitch and volume of the mechanics as the player's ammo begins to run out. This ammo count RTPC also influences the pitch and volume of the player's gun foley sounds, which are triggered as part of the footsteps event. I wanted each new burst of gunfire to be prominent in the mix, but didn't want this to continue if the player fires over a longer period. I created a TimeSinceFired RTPC, which is updated to 0 after every gunshot and is then updated with a value of 5 3 seconds after the player stops firing. The interpolation time, set on the blueprint node to 10 milliseconds, is just long enough for the first few shots to be noticeably louder before returning to their normal level. As an added effect, each gunshot also triggers a shell casing sound, which falls to the player's right in random patterns to match the visuals. The Lyra project already keeps track of where a bullet is impacted after being fired, and has functionality in place to create the appropriate texture and particle effect in response to an impact. Using a process of elimination system made of branch nodes, I set instructions to play the correct impact sound at the impact's location. While I was designing the grenade sound, I decided that, as I wasn't trying to create a functioning game, it would be a good opportunity to explore a less realistic, more cinematic style of sound design that's still aligned with my original focus on player feedback. In real life, sound is obviously just vibrations in the air, and therefore it has a travel time, the most common example of which is the sound of thunder being heard a few seconds after a lightning strike. Inspired by this, I decided to experiment with travel speed for my grenade sound. I designed 3 grenade explosions, one distant, one very distant, and one close up. I also created an RTPC called Distance to Player, controlled by the distance between the grenade detonation and the listener, in this case the camera. A blending container controls whether the distant or very distant sound plays based on distance to player, which is audible instantly after detonation. The close-up sound effect plays on a delay, the length of which is controlled by distance to player. The result of all this is that the further away the player is from a grenade detonation, the longer there is until they hear the full explosion sound effect, and from this, they can estimate how far away it was. One final detail I added to the grenade is an additional glass layer to the explosion, which only plays if the detonation happens while on a glass surface. This is determined using a short line trace at the point of the explosion. Thanks for watching my technical breakdown of feedback systems in the Lyra project. If you'd like to see more of my work, then I have videos on my online portfolio breaking down my previous projects, as well as linear sound redesigns of various games.